Hi, I'm Craig, and this is the fourth video in this series about the solar system. This video I'm going to talk about Venus. Venus is the third planet from the Sun, and it is the closest planet to Earth. Venus is only a little bit smaller than Earth, a little bit smaller than Earth. The circumference of Venus, is 38,025 kilometers, and the radius of Venus, the radius from the center to the surface, is 6,052 kilometers. So the circumference is 38,025 kilometers, and the radius is 6,052 kilometers, only slightly smaller than Earth. Venus also has an iron core. We talked about Mercury, and I mentioned that, and I told you that Mercury was the closest planet to the Sun, the closest planet to the Sun, but it isn't the hottest planet. The hottest planet in the solar system is Venus. Venus is 462 degrees Celsius. Venus has a surface temperature of 462 degrees Celsius. Because Venus has a very thick atmosphere, it stops the sun's heat from escaping, which then causes a greenhouse effect. So, as the sun's rays hit the planet, they cannot escape. The sun's heat cannot escape. It hits the atmosphere and stays trapped within the atmosphere of Venus, and that is all around the planet. And because of this heat, there is no water on Venus. No water on Venus because it is so hot. But the surface of Venus seems to be made out of very fine-grained volcanic rock called basalt. Very fine volcanic rock. And volcanic rock is formed when lava from volcanoes cools and becomes solid. So when lava from a volcano, when lava cools, becomes cooler, becomes colder, it solidifies and it becomes hard and forms rocks. But even due to the intense heat of Venus, it may have been habitable many years ago, early in the history of Venus. It may have had water, so because it was close to the sun, the water evaporated. The water evaporated and created carbon dioxide. The water evaporated, creating carbon dioxide, which was released into the atmosphere, which is the cause of the greenhouse effect. Venus is the second closest planet to the Sun. It has an orbit of 108 million kilometers from the Sun. Venus has the most circular orbit of the Sun. The most circular. Venus has the most circular orbit, whereas the other planets have an elliptical orbit. They get closer to the Sun and then further away and then closer and further away. But they get closer and further away. But Venus is circular. Venus is also the closest planet to Earth. Venus is the closest planet to Earth. Venus and Earth are at the closest point every 584 days. Every 584 days, Venus and Earth are at the closest point, at 38 million kilometres. At 38 million kilometres every 584 days. So what is a transit of Venus? A planetary transit is when a planet travels between the Sun and the observer. It's when a planet like Venus passes between the Sun and the Earth, and it looks like a black disk. Looks like a black disk going across the Sun. Planetary transits don't happen very often. They happen less frequently than eclipses. The transits are very predictable, so we know when a transit will occur. When one transit happens, another occurs 8 years later. So after one transit, another happens after 8 years. The most recent transit of Venus occurred in 2004 and in 2012. The next transit will happen in 2117. The first recorded transit of Venus occurred in 1639. Which was observed by the astronomers Jeremiah Horrocks and William Crabtree. And then in 1769, Captain James Cook in 1769 sailed on the HMS Endeavour to view the transit of Venus. They viewed the event from Tahiti. Which is an island in the South Pacific Ocean. Somewhere around there in the South Pacific Ocean. Venus has the longest day of all the planets in the solar system. It takes 243 Earth days to rotate on its axis. To rotate on its axis, 243 days. The rotation on the axis is also called a sidereal day. 1 year on Venus, the time it takes Venus to travel around the Sun, takes 225 days. It takes 225 days for Venus to travel around the Sun. So that means that a sidereal day is longer than a year on Venus. Sidereal day is 243 days to rotate on the axis, and only 225 days to complete an orbit around the Sun. Most planets rotate anti-clockwise, but Venus is the only planet in the solar system that rotates clockwise. This is anti-clockwise because it goes against the clock, it goes the opposite direction to a clock. Anti-clockwise, and the other direction is clockwise. Anti-clockwise, clockwise. Most planets rotate anti-clockwise. So this will rotate on its axis anti-clockwise. But Venus rotates clockwise. It's the only planet that rotates the opposite direction. Scientists believe that it used to rotate anti-clockwise the same as the others. But because of a huge impact, because of an impact by an asteroid or some other celestial object, it flipped the planet, it turned the planet upside down, which is the reason it now rotates clockwise. In the last video I mentioned that Mercury was almost upright. Most planets are tilted on the axis, tilted. Mercury is almost upright, only a couple of degrees. Venus has a tilted axis of about 3 degrees, so it's almost upright. But because it is flipped upside down, it could also be said that it has an axis, a tilted axis of 177 degrees. But either way, the reason that seasons occur, spring, summer, autumn, winter, are because of the tilted axis. Because it's only a slight tilt, we can't distinguish between seasons on Venus. And Venus also has no moons. No moons orbiting Venus. Venus is a terrestrial planet, just like Earth is. But life as we know it would not be able to exist on Venus. Venus's atmosphere is made up mostly of carbon dioxide and also a little nitrogen. It's made up of mainly carbon dioxide, but also small amounts of nitrogen. And the planet is covered with clouds. The planet is covered with clouds that are about 80 kilometers thick. Covered with clouds that are about 80 kilometers thick. They are made mostly of sulfuric acid and sulfur dioxide. Mainly of sulfuric acid and sulfur dioxide. So with the atmosphere, the extreme temperature and hurricane-like winds moving at about 350 kilometers per hour make living on Venus impossible. There are not many craters on Venus like there are on other planets, such as Mercury, as I mentioned in the last video. Craters are caused by impacts from asteroids. When an asteroid hits a planet, it causes a crater, a hole in the surface. But on Venus there aren't many craters, which implies that Venus is a young planet. Scientists estimate that Venus is between 180 million years old and 800 million years old. Between 180 and 800 million years old. So it's a very young planet. Venus has the most volcanoes of any planet. Venus has the most volcanoes of any planet. There are thousands of volcanoes on Venus. Venus is one of 5 planets that can be seen in the sky with just your eye. Don't need a telescope to see Venus, you can see it with your eye. And Venus is the second brightest celestial object in the sky. It is only the moon that is a little brighter than Venus. Venus is named after the Roman goddess of love and beauty. Venus is named after the Roman goddess of love, and it is the only planet in the solar system that it is named after a female. There have been more than 40 spacecrafts sent to Venus, starting in 1962. The spacecraft launched in 1962. The first spacecraft was known as Mariner 2. There have been many more spacecrafts sent to Venus since then. In 2010, JAXA's Akatsuki was sent to Venus, but it failed. It failed to enter orbit. But in 2015, they sent it again, and it entered orbit, and it is still there now, taking photos and gathering data and information about Venus. In the next video, we're going to have a look at Earth, the planet we occupy. If you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. And if you would like to see more videos like this, then please leave a comment in the comment section and let me know. And I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.